Good evening from Vietnam. Thanks a lot for spending your afternoon joining our Inside Sharing show, General Duke, and sharing your stories with our global audience. And on behalf of listeners around the world, we want to say thank you.
My pleasure being with you. Glad we had an opportunity to gather together.
For your years of working, have you traveled to my country, Vietnam?
No, I have not. I was have many friends in the military that were there during the Vietnam War,
Hmm.
but I have not had an opportunity to go back. Those who were over there and went back have saw amazing changes in your country and really enjoyed it. Made friends. However, I have not had an opportunity to come over.
I Now you have a new friend, new family here in this country. So we would love to one day being able to see you and Dorothy in person and give you a big hug, big kiss in person. Okay.
Good. Okay. Hope so.
Yeah. And for a little taste about Asian culture, it's very honor for our audience to have a little introduction about who you are and the works that you are doing by yourself. Can you do that little introduction for us?
Well, let me start. I grew up in a small town in South Carolina. Uh, this is during World War II. I'm 88 years old right now, so I remember Pearl Harbor. And my dad served in the Navy. I wasn't in combat, but he served in the Navy. And when he got back after the war, I fell in love with the Navy and his generation of service. And so I decided to go to the Naval Academy. I graduated from the Naval Academy in 1957. And at the time, there was no Air Force Academy. And I fell in love with airplanes, and I could volunteer for the Air Force. And so I did that and I went into the Air Force upon graduation in 1957, became a pilot. And within a couple of years, by 1959, I was headed to Germany in my first squadron. And that year, NASA was formed and the first group of astronauts were formed. When I was in flight, to back up a little bit, when I was in flight school, in October of 1957, Sputnik was launched. And to me, that was the beginning of the space age. And the space race began shortly after that. Well,
Hmm.
got to Germany in 59, and in 61, Yuri Gagarin was the first human being in space. Shortly thereafter, Alan Shepard became the first American. And then just shortly after that, President Kennedy announced the Apollo program that we were going to go to the moon and land on the moon by the end of 1969. Well, I thought it was crazy idea, but turned out 8 years and 2 months later, I'm sitting in mission control and on Apollo 11 and talking to Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin when they landed on the moon. So 8 years and 2 months later, we accomplished the goal. Well, in 1962, I rotated back to the States. The Air Force sent me to graduate school at MIT. And while I was there, I was working on the Apollo guidance and navigation system that MIT had the contract to build. And we were taking data to make sure the system was operational, and we did, and the system worked perfectly, and we proved that it was easy to operate in an operational setting. So I got my degree, and I met some astronauts while I was there working on this system, and they were very excited, enthusiastic. I'd never met anybody that was so excited about their job. And I asked, how did I get that job? And they laughed and said, well, you need to get your degree, go to test pilot school, and you might have a chance. So I followed their advice, got accepted to test pilot school in 1965, no, 64, graduated in 65. Stayed on as an instructor at the test pilot school. And in September of 65, there was an article in the paper said NASA's looking for more astronauts, and so I applied and was selected in April of 1966. So we moved to Houston, and I started my 10-year career as an astronaut in 1966. And then I was mostly, at first, I was working following the development of the Saturn rocket, which was an amazing machine. Still is, I think, biggest one ever launched, rocket ever launched. And so then I got support crew for Apollo 10, and I was mission control for that. There was mission control for Apollo 11, backup on Apollo 13, flew to the moon on Apollo 16, and backup for Apollo 17. So I worked on more Apollo missions individually than anybody else in the astronaut office. 5 I were associated with, and only flew once. So there were 9 missions to the moon, 6 landings. So that's 12 people, and 3 people went to the moon twice, but nobody landed but once. And so we had 24 that went to the moon of the 27 seats. So there were 3 people went twice. And so anyway, John Young and I, after a long delay in between Apollo 14 and Apollo 15 and 16, we landed in the Descartes Highlands. By this time we had a spacecraft that lasted for 3 days on the moon instead of 1 day. And we had a car called the Lunar Rover that we took with us, and which revolutionized lunar exploration. And we were the only mission that landed in the mountain. I call it the mountains of the moon. As you look at the moon, there's the dark areas and the light areas. The light areas are the highlands, or the mountains. And so we landed almost on the equator, east of 00 latitude, longitude, and in the Descartes Highlands, it was called. And so if you imagine Apollo 11 at sea level, we landed at about 2,500 meters above that. So we were in I'd say they call it the mountains of the moon. Didn't look like mountains because we were up on the top of them. But it was very exciting and very dynamic and very stressful 3 days, if you will. You had so much to do, and you wanted to make sure you did it right. Hopefully things didn't break, and so fortunately the car worked well, and so we were able to drive a total of about 25, not quite 25 kilometers across the moon. And so we accomplished our goals, and 3 days later we left and started home.
Wow, wow. General Duke, this conversation is to explore your dreams and how that dreams come into reality, because there are 8 billion people on Earth, plus, from 72 until now, there's another 3 billion. So 11 billion people on Earth, only 12 people ever landed on the moon. You were one of them, the youngest one also. So allow us to travel time together and unveil your dreams before you became an astronaut. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
All righty. So when Vivian, my wife, was young, she wanted to become a singer. When she grew up, she wanted to become a singer. And to be honest, when I was young, when I was little, I wanted to become an astronaut. But life didn't give me nor Vivian any opportunity to do the works that we thought as children we wanted to become. And so we want to know the real astronaut, General Duke, when you was little. What was your dream about your own self when you grow up, though?
Well, I grew up doing, in my memory, as I said, I was 6 years old when Pearl Harbor came,
Mm.
and my dad went off to the Navy. Uh, we went to live with my grandmother after about a year in a small town in South Carolina. So I can remember the hardships of World War II, the rationing, the no gasoline. Uh, Fortunately, we lived on my grandmother's farm, and she had animals, so we could milk the cows and churn the butter uh, and learn how to just live off the land, if you will. And that's my memories of being very patriotic and in support of the war in any way a 6 to 8 year old could do. So we collected tinfoil, we collected items like bottles and plastics and stuff like that. We turned them in, and so that was our contribution to the war. Was the support of the rationed items and not wasting anything. So I learned to be very frugal,
Mm.
and I had a twin brother and a first cousin. We were all the same age, so the three of us grew up in this for 2 years in this very small town, and and so I can remember the train track went behind my mother's grandmother's house, and the troop trains carrying soldiers back and forth between the military bases. We'd go down and wave, and they'd wave back. So my heroes really became the soldiers, sailors, and airmen of World War II.
Mm.
And I respected them so much, and they were so sacrificial in their service. But we were going to determined, and so after the war was over, we moved to. My parents moved to Lancaster, South Carolina, which is up in the upstate and small town, 7,000 to 8,000 people. And there, it was the beginning of the space age. I mean, the jet age. So I'd look up and I'd see these white contrails go over. The jets were making the contrails in the upper atmosphere. And that was the beginning of a love for aviation. I didn't get to fly, but I fell in love with hopefully one day making a contrail. And so when I got to the Naval Academy, as I said earlier, there was they taught us, they didn't teach us to fly, but they gave us some exposure to aviation. And I got really absorbed in flying and wanted to be a pilot. And so there was two opportunities. One was to be a naval aviator or to go to the Air Force aviation. And I didn't qualify for naval aviation. I was a slight problem with my right eye that was disqualifying for the Navy then, but not for the Air Force. So that
Oh.
really made my decision. This physical problem that was never interfered with my career, but in the at the exam, I was only given a choice to go Air Force aviation. So I made that choice to volunteer for the Air Force. And after I graduated, I became a lieutenant in the Air Force and went straight that summer of 57. I went to uh, uh, flight school.
Mm.
That began my career. And then I just was fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. And I tell all the young people to keep your antennas up because you never know. You get these little vibes, and they can direct you in different parts of your of different directions, if you will, in your career. And so after the first group of astronauts was selected in 1959, it was, oh well, I was too young. I'm never be an astronaut. But made the right decisions to have an opportunity to become an astronaut, and that was going to graduate school. I could have stayed in Germany for another year, 62 to 63. If I'd made that decision, I never would have been an astronaut. So it was a decision. I got to go to school. Not that I want to be an astronaut, but I got to go to school. So I made the decision to leave my great job in Germany flying and go into academics background, getting a master's in aeronautics and astronautics. Wow. That decision gave me opportunity 3 years later to volunteer for the space program. Had I stayed in Germany another year, I never would have become an astronaut. So those little decisions like that affect us and can have major impact in your life. So I wasn't praying that back then, but I was listening to these impressions that I had, and that was go back to school. And by the way, I went back to school, and 2 months later, I met this gal who became my wife a year later.
So tell us, back in Germany, you had that question in your head, the calling in your head to go back to America, to go back to MIT for school, right? So, and then you responded to it. What message did you talk to yourself back then to put the whole career, the very bright career at the moment aside and then go for higher education?
Well, the primary motivation, I think, was the Air Force said, we really want you to go to graduate school. It'll be great for your career. And so I listened to them, and I decided to follow their advice, even though I was giving up a great, exciting job. But going back to school wasn't really great, exciting job. It was turned out to be very, very difficult. I'd been out of school for 5 years, and electrical engineering had passed me by, and aerodynamics had passed me by, and all of the things that I had to catch up on. I couldn't do a calculus problem. I couldn't do anything, but I caught up and ended up graduating primarily because of the thesis that I did. It was well received, and NASA enjoyed it, and the astronauts liked it, and my professors liked it. So I got an A+ on my thesis, and that was a lot of hours. So my grade point went from C+ to A+.
Tell us, how did you meet Dorothy during the MIT time?
Well, there were 4 of us military bachelors in my class, and we didn't like the graduate school, the graduate house where we were staying. It was just a room. It was more like living in a hotel, a very low class hotel, I should say. So we were looking for an apartment, and we had met these girls who were living in an apartment, found out that they were going to move out at the end of the summer, and we could move in. So we rented this place, and so this was in August, I guess, right after summer school. And we, roommate and I went over there, and these girls were from the University of North Carolina, and they had a visitor named Dottie, who was a graduate of University of North Carolina, and she was there visiting and staying with them till she found a job and found an apartment. So we got there one evening, and well, I wanted to meet this new girl, so we sort of sat there, and finally she came out from the back. She'd been looking for a job all day long, and so she was tired, but we weren't going to, I wasn't going to leave till she came out. So anyway, she came out, and I met her, and we talked about an hour, then the next morning, I went home. I drove back to South Carolina, and I told my mom, "Mom, I have met the girl I was going to marry." And so
Oh,
that 5 minute conversation, a 30-minute conversation, did it. It was just I just knew that she was the one. And so when I got back to Boston and started my the fall semester, I found out where she was living and called her up, and we started going out. And I had told her that when I got back, I would uh, cook a meal for her, and I was doing a lot of cooking back then. So I found her and did cook a meal for her, and she was very thankful. And she and her two roommates. So it was, but that was the beginning, our first date together, and within a month I was ready to get married, but took me a little bit longer to convince her that maybe we ought to do this. But by this was September we started dating, and by uh, November we were engaged unofficially. And but we got officially after I asked that her parents could I marry her, they said yes. We got officially engaged in Christmas of 1962, and we were married the next June. So we've been
wow.
now married 61 years,
Wow.
and I think we're going to survive.
How did you, within the 30 minutes of conversation, found out and that Dorothy is the girl you're gonna marry?
Well, we had a lot of. She has an adventurous spirit, and she had been in Germany on a tour for 2 months, and so we had a lot to talk about Germany. What was your favorite spot? Not only about Germany, but about Europe, because I traveled around too as 3 years there in the weekends and stuff, and so we had a lot of talk about. And she uh, just I think like my adventurous spirit, and I liked hers, and so we just it's just a feeling of oneness there, I guess, and
Mm.
that and you just end up knowing that knowing that there's something special about this relationship, and so that's why I went home and I said, "Mom, I met the girl I was going to marry." Dottie didn't know anything about it, but she turned out that a month or two later she was in love too. So all worked out.
I'm curious. On the way, and when you were in North Carolina, talk to your mom. What did your mom say?
My mom said, well, she was thankful because I was, uh, my twin brother had been married several years. And so she was hopeful that I didn't come back with a foreigner from Germany and would meet somebody from the South. She wanted me to meet a Southern girl. So Dottie was from Atlanta, and so we had a lot in common being from the same state, not the same state. I was from South Carolina, but Georgia's right next door. And so we had a lot to talk about, especially in Germany and all other things. And so we had that same adventurous spirit. We went skiing together a lot and still did until last year when she had a shoulder replacement. So we have given up skiing. So, but anyway, we got along really well.
So she and you married before you joined NASA into the Apollo program.
That's correct. We got married in the summer of 1963. I graduated from MIT the next summer, summer of 64. Test pilot school was a year, so I graduated from test pilot school in 1965 in that summer. And in September of 1965, I was now working on staff at test pilot school. And I read an article in the paper that says NASA's seeking more astronauts. And if you're interested, these are the qualifications. Please submit your application. So being in the military, you had a special avenue you had to submit your application to. So I filled out all the paperwork. My boss helped me, and so they sent our records, all the military guys, to headquarters in Washington, and they approved some and disapproved some, but they approved mine and sent it on to NASA. So now, at least at NASA, and it turned out there was probably 3,500 of us that were eligible in the final pool, and they selected 19 of us.
Wow.
It got a lot more competitive after that. We were just males. Females weren't allowed to apply back then. So when about 10 years ago, NASA had a selection of, of astronauts, men and women. They had 18,000 applications, and they picked 12.
18 to
Uh,
12. Wow, that's
yeah. So
wow.
I don't know how they weeded all out 18,000 down to 12, but they did. And everybody that they picked has worked out really well.
General Duke, you say that the ambition for you to become an astronaut came because a group of men were so happy at their job, and you hardly see people really happy at work, and then that's a trick for you to say, okay, how can you be be one, right? So what did they do that makes you feel like, okay, you want to become an astronaut like them?
Well, they were all pilots, and they had this love for aviation, and they were going to be flying something that hardly anybody had ever done. And the Mercury program was just going on, and that was the first group of astronauts, which was 7 people.
Mm.
And these guys were in the second and third group, and they just were waiting to get a flight, and they were so excited about going into space, and this enthusiasm and excitement rubbed off, and I wanted to get back into flying from when I graduated. I would graduate with a master's in aeronautical engineering, and that assignment usually is to a Air Force laboratory, not flying, just going back and being a engineer. And so I thought that I got to get back to flying, and if these guys are having so much fun, and they said test pilot school was a way to go, then I followed their advice, and it turned out to be good advice, and so I enjoyed test pilot school, did well, worked on staff for almost a year, and then we moved back to Houston moved to Houston from California, and I became an astronaut in April of 1966.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what did Tony say about you
Well,
becoming an astronaut, potentially going to the unknown, to the moon?
well, it was a um an excitement for me, or for her, to have a husband that was so excited about uh, the job that he was going to do. And so there were some fatalities when we were first got into the program. 4 were killed in airplane accidents. 3 were killed in a fire at Kennedy Space Center, Apollo 1, and uh, and then 1 was killed automobile accident. So in the space of a little over 2 years, we had 8 fatalities out of there were 50. Don't remember exactly, like 52, let's say, astronauts. And
Mm.
so 7 of them had been killed. And then the senior ones, like John Glenn, retired, and Scott Carpenter retired. And so everybody just sort of bubbled up into this pool of astronauts. And we began uh, doing significant jobs once we got there. They gave us a couple of months of this is NASA, how does that operate, and who's what and who's where, and then they started geology training for us. We're going to go to the moon. We ought to know what kind of rocks to pick up, and so we I enjoyed the geology because it was out in the field, and you were out of the office and tromping around the mountains and the desert and wherever they thought you needed to learn how to pick up rocks. And so that was very interesting in our training. And so it was Dottie was excited about leaving California. Edwards Air Force Base, where the test pilot school is in the middle of the Mojave Desert. And it's desert. You know, we drove 35 miles to go to a big department store. We drive 30 miles to go to church on Sunday. We drive 110 miles just to have dinner down in Los Angeles, just to get out of the desert. And so she was very thankful that we were, and she was no, she'd had our first son was born in April of 1965. Yeah, 65. And so Charles was born, and she was happy to get out of the desert to get back to trees and grass and you know, those kind of things. And and plus it was halfway across the country, almost halfway home for her in Georgia. So she was pleased that I got selected, and never did wring her hands and worry about me getting killed in a spacecraft. Never did.
Oh, General, I'm curious, like for thousands of hours you got training and prepared to go to the moon. I would assume that still something, the anxiety, the challenge from the physical to mental will be with you along the way. So I'm just curious what courage that give you to hold on along that journey that you travel to the moon.
Motivated to the goal of the job. The goal of the job was to go into space. And the big goal was to get to the moon. And the biggest goal was to land on the moon. And so that really motivated me to work hard, apply myself, do whatever NASA said I had to do to follow the program and the development of the systems, and especially the rockets, the Saturn rocket. And so I did that, and for about let's see, until the summer of '68, and they started looking at Apollo, getting the schedule started to go to send one to the moon, Apollo 8, in December of '68. No, 68. And then the next flight, Apollo 9, was to be back in Earth orbit checking out the lunar module. And the next flight was Apollo 10 that was going to take the lunar module to the moon and simulate a descent, start down, but not land and abort and come back up. Well, I was working on that flight and helping with the procedures and all, and was in mission control as CapCom when they started that part of the activation of the spacecraft, the lunar module, and then there doing all the descent and all. And it was a very successful mission. And so as a result of that, Neil Armstrong, the commander of Apollo 11, which was going to schedule to be the first attempt that we had to land on the moon, and it was scheduled for July. Apollo 10 had been May of '69, and now we're July, 2 months later, we're going to land on the moon. Well, Neil Armstrong invited me to be CapCom, to be in mission control, talking to them, since I'd done the job on Apollo 10, which was almost identical to their mission except for the landing. And so I said, sure, Neil, that'd be a great honor to be involved in this first landing. And so I trained for them. We had 2 months to get trained, and they were in, of course, in the simulators. We were in mission control, and we got them all together and we did simulations. Like we simulated landing on the moon, or we simulated a crash, or we simulated a no rendezvous, or whatever, you know. Tried to figure out what could go wrong and how do you fix it. And so it was very good training for them and for us in mission control. And the flight launched right on schedule, and they hadn't any problems going to the moon, and they started their descent. And at that point, we started having problems. And so the tension rose in mission control. We're going to really pull this off. You know, first off, we had communication problems, and then we had computer problems, computer overloads. Then we had trajectory problems, and all of that was mounting up, and the tension in mission control was just going through the roof. And so the final, I had the final thing was when it at like 2,000 meters above the moon, the vehicle pitches down so the windows, you can see the moon from the windows, and the trajectory was all wrong. And so Neil had to get down around 200 meters and fly across the moon horizontally till he found a place to land. Well, that used up all of our spare fuel. And so now we're getting minimum fuel on the descent. And so the last two calls from Mission Control were Eagle, which was their call sign, Eagle 60 seconds. He meant he had 60 seconds to land. Then I called Eagle 30 seconds, and he wasn't on the ground, but they were close. And you can imagine the tension in Mission Control. Are we going to make it? Are we going to make it? Are we going? And they were as calm as I listened to them and their response, and they weren't breathing hard or anything like that. In fact, we didn't hear Neil at all. It was just Buzz Aldrin talking. Mm. And so I called 30 seconds, and 13 seconds later, I heard Buzz Aldrin say, "Contact, engine stop." And that we knew they were on the ground, and hopefully right side up and didn't turn over. And a few seconds later, Neil says, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed." And a great cheer went up in Mission Control. And I was so excited I couldn't even pronounce tranquility. It came out twang. Roger, Tranquility, we copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot. And that was the beginning of a 24-hour successful mission in the first landing on the moon. And we had 5 more landings after that. And the last 3 were, instead of 24 hours, we had a lunar module that had a car, and we could explore bigger areas of the moon. Plus, we could stay for 3 days instead of 72 hours one day. 70 hours. No, 24 hours, I'm sorry, one day. So it was a monumental steps and success in Apollo as we got. In fact, Apollo was so successful, they canceled the last 3 missions, Apollo 18, 19, and 20. There was some concern about fatalities. You know, we never had an accident up there that killed anybody. And so let's get this done on Apollo 17 and we'll call it quits. We've done a good job. So, after Apollo 11, I went to backup on Apollo 13, helped get them back. That was the mission that exploded on the way to the moon. They lost all their electrical power and their command module. And we still had the lunar module. And so we had to power it up and figure out how to make it last 90 hours till they got back. And mission control was the unsung heroes of Apollo. They just solved the problem. Every flight, there was something went wrong. And they were able to work around it or fix it. And so on Apollo 13, we kept fixing things. We went around the moon and came back. It was 90 hours from the explosion until they splashed down in the ocean. So we worked really, really hard to get them successful. And the crew did a great job too. So that's teamwork, and that's the secret of Apollo.
From the unsung heroes in the mission control, and then since when you got notified that you're gonna become an astronaut, and we take the whole mission on the Apollo 16 to officially land on the moon for 3 days.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
question. Yes, my question was, since when you not got that informed?
Uh, well, I was ecstatic when I got picked for backup crew for Apollo 13 because the rotation was Apollo 13, backup, Apollo 16, fly. So
Mm.
you knew you were in the rotation. If you did a backup 3 flights later, you flew.
Oh.
And so if you didn't foul up, make mistakes and kill yourself in a plane crash or car crash or something like that, of course. But so that was the rotation, and the first landings, Apollo 11, 12, and 14, were all 24 hours on the moon, and they wanted a longer stay, as I said earlier, of on the moon from 1 day to 3 days. So they expanded the things inside the lunar module, and they added a car that would give us a 3 day stay on the moon and a way to explore vast amounts of surface with this little electric car. And so it really revolutionized lunar exploration and was a tremendous asset because we were able to cover. We went south for 4 kilometers. We went north 6 kilometers. We went west about 2 kilometers. And so in total, we drove, it was over 20 kilometers. Out and back and all of this. And we had some spectacular views. The surface of the moon is very undulating, and there's
Mm.
craters and rocks all over. And it's very sharp visible things because there's no atmosphere to give you some haze or anything. It's just very, very bright sunlight the whole time you're there, and you can see very clearly to the horizon. And
Mm.
then off to the north, you could see clearly to the mountains to the north and the craters we were going to visit. And to be honest, you felt right at home. We studied the maps for 2 years. And so we knew where we landed. We knew which way we had to go. We had maps that showed us direction and distance. And the rover was working. So the exploration of our flight was went very, very well. And we collected the biggest rock ever picked up on the moon. We didn't want to pick it up, but they said pick it up, so we obeyed. And I mean, this is like a big I don't know. You have watermelons in Vietnam, but this thing is like a baby in your arms.
Yeah.
And when we got back down, it weighed 20 pounds. Well, up on the moon, it weighed 3 pounds. And so but it was so big, I had to roll it up my leg and cradle it in my arm as like this. And as I walked
Oh.
back to the lunar module with this big rock, we argued with them. We don't want to pick up that big rock. Yeah, pick it up. So we obeyed. And anyway, we collect a lot of different samples. We made the lunar surface activities that we accomplished were all top notch, if you will. We made every major objective. We took the pictures. We collected rocks that we were supposed to collect, and they were different than they expected. So they were very excited that we were collecting these rocks that were unusual in the lunar geology. And so it turned out to be very, very exciting mission to the mountains of the moon, and they were very pleased with our performance, and also everything worked great. And so we stayed till the end of our time, and I had had a little picture of my family, a little snapshot, and I left it up on the moon, and everybody, the whole family was so excited about that. On the back, we had written, I had written, "This is the family of astronaut Charlie Duke from planet Earth who landed on the moon in April 1972," and we all signed it. And I dropped it on the moon, took a picture. And the only scary part of the whole flight was towards right at the end there. We were going to have fun and celebrate the Moon Olympics. The Olympics were in Munich that year, the Summer Olympics. And we were going to do the Moon Olympics. And down here with all of my equipment on, I weighed 160 kilos. But up on the moon, only a sixth of that. So, 20 kilos. And so I started bouncing, and I bounced trying to set the high jump record, and I fell over backwards. And that was scary, because if the life support system was on your back,
in the back,
and if it broke, you were dead instantly. So fear is not a bad emotion if you don't panic. And so I said, I had this thought, roll right. And I rolled to my right and broke my fall on my right side, bounced onto my heart, on my back, and my heart was pounding, but I'm still alive. Wow. And I could check the pressure. It seemed like the radio was working. All of the pressures were constant. And so John, my commander, helped me up. And as that helped me up, the TV camera was pointed right at me. And Mission Control was very upset. No more Moon Olympics, guys. Get ready to get back inside. But I say, we set the high jump record on the moon. So probably a meter and a half or so. And fortunately, I survived that little stupid stunt.
Yeah. Well, General Duke, when I saw the image, the CM were landed in the middle of the oceans when you're coming back to the Earth, I just feel like there's gonna be a lot of emotion within you, because you've been, seeing magnificent things, amazing things, normal human like me would never imagine in our lifetime. So I would say it's even bigger courage for you to start a normal life after such amazing thing you've seen after the journey, right? Yeah.
That's correct. It was difficult. I was 36, the youngest that walked on the moon. And after Apollo was over, 6 months later, 8 months later, let me say, I was working on Space Shuttle, and it was I was 36, 37. And I was at the top of my career and the top of the ladder, and the thought occurred to me: what are you going to do now? How are you going to top a flight to the moon? So I became frustrated, if you will. We had 2 boys at the time. Our marriage was in trouble. Dottie was very depressed. In fact, had suicidal thoughts because our marriage wasn't going like she thought it should go. And so she began to get depressed. And so she even considered suicide, because if life's so bad and so miserable, and I'm so upset, I'm so sad, why live any longer? Well, we were in a church, but we we weren't believers. By believers, I mean having Jesus in your heart and not just in your mind. And so some people came to our church one weekend, and they had a joy and a peace about them, and it was just contagious. And Dottie looked at them, and I went home after that weekend and said, "I've tried everything but Jesus." And she said, "Jesus, if you're real, come into my life. If you're not, I want to die." That was her request. Well, it took about 2 months, but I watched her change from sadness to joy, and she was it was just dramatic. And we were leaving the space program then, and this was now 1976, and so she began to she began to have this forgiving spirit, a loving spirit, and while I hadn't changed, she had changed, and her focus went off of me to God, and to let Jesus be in charge. And so that gave her a lot of peace. And as we moved to left NASA, and I was starting a business, my mind had gone from moon to money, maybe money. I had no peace in my life. And so I was very successful in business. This new town we moved in, Dottie was blessed, and a new church. It was wonderful. And so she was just at peace and had forgiven me for everything that I had done wrong. And forgiveness is so important in relationships. And back to scripture, the Bible teaches that it says, "Do not let the sun go down on your anger." If you're angry with your spouse, settle it before you go to sleep. And that's forgiveness. And Jesus forgave us for all of our sins, and we're to forgive one another. And so I was very successful in business, but I wasn't happy, wasn't having no peace. And so in March of 1978, I sold the business. And in April of 1978, I was invited to a Bible study at the local tennis club. And I went and didn't want to, but I was a real good friend of mine invited me. So to be nice, I went. Well, it was a life changer, of course. And I got there and I started listening to I'd been in church all my life. I can remember going to church as a little boy, but it was here and not here. And in your head, not heart. And so I was listening to these scriptures, and one stuck out was Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to God except through me." Now, that's either true or a lie. And we get to decide. I get to decide whether, if that's true, I'm going to believe it and accept it and say, "Lord, come into my life." If it's a lie, just ignore it. So I don't believe that. And so we have choices to make. And so I made the choice after that weekend that Jesus was the Son of God. And I said, "Lord, come into my life." And sitting in my automobile right after that Bible study, when I said that, the peace of God entered my life. And I had never had an experience like that. That was in spring of 1978. And that began our journey with as our Christian journey, and we're still involved with traveling in Christian ministry, and I do motivational talks also. And but our focus, we try to represent Jesus in all of our lives and all of our understanding and all of our relationships. And it saved our marriage, and our boys became Christians, and so we ended up having a wonderful friendships, and we've traveled all over the world sharing our faith. and it's been very, very moving to see some of the changes in people's lives. And we've not been to Vietnam, as I said, but we've been to China, we've been to Malaysia, we've been to India, all throughout South America, Africa, sharing our faith and just loving people. For God so loved the world that he gave his. Yeah. And so we're to represent God's love as we travel. And so I still a motivational speaker. I make a living now sharing my story, not through podcasts, but by being a consultant on various opportunities that I have at NASA. And I'm working on the new lunar rover now is my focus, which is going to be for the Artemis program. We're well on the way to send human beings back to the moon, and it's going to be a major challenge, a lot harder than Apollo, because we're going to land at the South Pole, and the shadows, it's real rough, and the shadows are deep. The sun never gets above about 2 degrees above the horizon down there. So the shadows are real dark, but real bright in the sun, in the surface and the sunlight. And as the moon turns around, the shadows move, of course. And so you've got to have a good guidance system. And we've got the rockets, I think, to take us there. And the lunar lander is being worked on by two people. There were two versions of it. SpaceX is doing one, and then Blue Origin is doing the other. So we'll see which one they decide. SpaceX is, I think, in the lead right now, but who knows? So we'll see. Anyway, I still stay active, and people want me to say, what was it like on the moon? I'm talking to the astronauts, and they were really excited about going. And I said, well, it's be alert. These are some of the things you need to be concerned about.
It's a beautiful journey of traveling to the moon and 61 years of beautiful marriage with Dorothy. Of course, with up and down, also General Drew. So if you can travel time with us again one more time, and you go back onto the September of 1962 when you first dated Dorothy, all right, and you want to tell her about the 61 years of married, of the exploring journey that you guys have been to. So what would you say to her?
What would I say to Dottie?
Yeah, for that 61 years of amazing.
I just say 61 years. I said, love, I can't believe we're here. God has given us 61 years together, and as long as we are alive, we're going to serve God and serve one another and love one another and forgive one another. We still have these fights, and it's just human nature. But as I said earlier in the program, before we go to bed, we settle it and said, forgive me. Forgiveness is a really important attitude and character. You admit your mistakes. We admit our mistakes and what our fault. And when we say, forgive me, and she says, I forgive you, and I forgive you, darling, and then it's all settled, and you're back into union again. And it's been, I guess, the salvation of our marriage is that understanding of the power of forgiveness, the power of love. Love overcomes a lot, and so we try to live out that God's love reflected in us to our spouses. And so far we've made it. I'll be 89 in October. Dottie's like 85 or so, and be 86, I guess. She's born in 1940. I'm in still good health, which I'm surprised, but I am, and I'm thankful to God for that. So as long as I'm able to travel and the world situation is such that you can travel, then we'll continue our not only our speaking of about inspirational speeches and motivational speeches, but also our Christian walk, which is we want to reflect that to everybody.
Beautiful.
So thank you for the opportunity to share with you, and I'm glad we were able to have this program.
You know, we are the one who thankful for this opportunity and so generous of you to spend time. I know it's 7 minutes past our time already. Is that a possibility of we can have one last question for you?
Yes, go ahead.
Alrighty. So Vivian and I, we've been on the quest to help people to improve their ability to think because we believe that thinking is really important. And if we can help people to improve their ability to think, we can help them to create a new journey for themselves. Okay. And we've been asking so many people, so many experts about their practice of thinking through interviews like this, but we never interview an astronaut and how an astronaut, like who landed on the moon expand his ability to think over the years. So General Duke, how have you been improved your ability to think over the years?
I think with more knowledge that you get, and the older you get more maturity, and you can analyze situations more rationally than that. Now I can see that that happens to me in my life as I've gotten maturity and more experience, and I can relate these experiences to my present experience and apply the lessons that I've tried to learn in the past. And I think life is a building block of experience and relationships. And I found now that since I've become a Christian and a follower of Jesus, I pray more about, Lord, what should I do? And where should I go? And how should we operate in our life and in our relationships? And I've never heard the voice of God in my ears, but I have these impressions in my heart. And so it's like God's spirit speaking to our spirit in our heart and says, go this way. You have an inclination that you ought to do this. And when sometimes I miss it, but most of the time it works out. So and Dottie and I, we pray a lot about decisions and what we should do and where we should go and what we should say, and just all of these things that make us one, if you will, with God. And so it's been an exciting journey for the last 40 years or so. And,
General Duke, thank you so much for spending time with us, sharing your amazing stories with a lot of amazing things that Vivian and I would overwhelming with the love, the kindness, the insight that you share. So right after this conversation, could you please hold Dottie and give her a big hug and big kiss for us to make this interview happen, please?
Hold on a minute. Dottie, come here. She just say, get in the picture and say hello.
Oh. Hey, Dottie. Hey, I told General Duke that right after this meeting, please give you a big hug, a big kiss. So you guys are so beautiful, so kind, and I'm really thankful for this wonderful opportunity to meet you guys. Yeah. Perhaps one day, Dottie, and we want to interview you also, Dottie. for the journey that transforming you, for the forgive and for the journey of forgiveness, for the journey of looking to the for Jesus and change. So that interview will be very very meaningful for a lot of listeners also one day if you can consider. Okay.
We like to talk about the Lord.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Yes.
much. Yeah. Please take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.